Hello and welcome to All Things Technical, and today we're going to find out what this Audi TT is all about. This particular example is known as the 8J and is the second generation of the Audi TTs, which were built between 2006 and 2014, while this car is from 2012. Apparently the name TT stands for Tourist Trophy, after the famous motorcycle race on the Isle of Man. Now, I personally like the second generation best looks-wise. Simply spoken, the first generation is a bit too simplistic in its design, and the second generation is a bit too angular, so this hits the sweet spot in between. So let me show you around it a bit more. From this angle you can clearly see the general shape of the car. It's basically a slightly rounded box with a greenhouse on top, but the design has massaged the lines a little, so it doesn't look as geometric as the first generation did. The roofline, for example, flows a little bit more gently into the back of the body, while the first generation had quite a distinct line where the roof met the body. But let's look at a few more details around here. The TT is a sports car, and to show its stance on the road, even the first generation had massive wheel arches already, and so does this one. They are enormous. And another noticeable thing about the side of this car is a very distinct line running all the way from the front of the car to the back. It starts here and the bumper is being continued by the light, and then the bonnet takes over. Here it is pushed up a little by the fat fenders, which must have been an absolute nightmare for the engineers, who had to make sure that all of the tolerances were met and the panel gap was nice and consistent. Anyhow, then it is back to its original height, where it leads up to the front door. Here the line is not defined by a panel gap anymore, but by a ridge in the door panel, which then keeps going into the sidewall until the rear light takes over. That's quite a long way this line has travelled, and it is also a nod to the first generation of the TT, because it had the exact same line running across its whole length. But there is one more design feature that this generation kept from the first generation of the TT, and that is the fuel filler cap. It is race car inspired and silver in its appearance, no matter the colour of the car. But since we're back here already, let's look at the rear end of the car. It is back here where you get a first idea of how wide this car actually is. It might be fairly low, but it is wide. Apart from that, there is not much going on back here. The design is very clean, just like with the first generation. They didn't have a spoiler in the beginning to keep the design clean. However, that led to aerodynamic instabilities at higher speeds, which caused a few fatal crashes. So they gained a fixed spoiler lip at the end. This generation, however, manages to keep its design tidy by using a retractable spoiler that extends and lowers by the push of a button. And of course we have the twin exhaust pipes here, because this is an Audi TT S line, so they let you know that this is a sporty car. Take a quick listen. There is a bootlet too, which you can only unlock via a button on the key fob or a button in the driver's door, which is a little inconvenient, but here we go. This is the biggest hatchback I've ever seen. It is unbelievably long. So here we have the boot. It is perfect for a shopping trip to IKEA when you're buying some flat pack furniture, because the only thing you can fit in this boot is something that, well, packs flat. It is relatively shallow, but rather deep. But since we've been speaking of big doors, and this thing officially counts as a door because it has a window in it, let's go and check out the main doors. The doors are very, very long, and for some reason the windows retract to different heights when you lower them, which I have never seen before. But because the doors are so long, it is very easy to get in and out, so let's check out the interior. Oh wait, the steering wheel is on that side in this car. Oh well, what you can see in here is that the interior design is also very clean. The center console is fairly simple and turned slightly towards the driver's side. There are 5 climate control vents on an otherwise relatively plain dashboard. The instrument cluster is nice and tidy and looks sporty with its red accents. Also sporty is the steering wheel with its flat bottom. I actually like the interior of the 2nd generation better than the interior of the 3rd generation. There's just too much going on in that. Everything in here might be relatively simple, but the quality is very good. There's Alcantara in the doors, and even the foam the dashboard is made of feels and looks very good. The steering wheel is leather wrapped, and the seats are partially covered in leather too. Speaking of seats, there are 2 more seats behind me, believe it or not. So let's see how comfortable those are. And in order to get into the back, you have to open the boot first, and you'll see why in a second. I've made it, but there is no way I can put the seat back in its original position, and I've already pushed it forwards quite a bit. Now let's see what happens when we try to close the boot lid. Right, this is not exactly comfortable. So in order to sit back here, you can't have any legs, and you shouldn't really have a head either. And since I don't think you're going to have too many friends that are basically just a torso, I assume the rear seats in this car make for a better boot extension than they make this car a proper people carrier. So let's try and get out of this again. But before we take this car out on the road, let's have a look what makes it actually go. And in order to open the bonnet, we need this lever here that for some reason always comes undone. And a quick look under the bonnet reveals a big hole. There is so much space here that is really unusual for a modern car. It looks like you could fit 2 more cylinders in here. Funny that, you can get this car with 2 more cylinders. There's a 2-litre turbocharged straight 4 engine under the bonnet here, which might not sound too impressive at first, but it does make around 211 horsepower and a very respectable 350 Newton meters. You can also get the TT with a 2.5-litre inline 5-cylinder engine or a 3.2-litre VR6, which will definitely fill that gap. And now it is time to see what this car is like on the road. And what better way to test this than with a good old 2-day road trip, basically from the south of Northern Ireland all the way to the north and along the coast. And this gave us the chance to test the boot space, and there is generous luggage in here for 2 days, and we haven't even filled the rear seats yet, so that's not too bad. And then we hit the road. Since I'm not insured in this car, I'll have to experience the journey from the passenger seat, and that's actually quite nice because I get to look around. On the way to the north, we travelled on lots of different types of roads. There were some lovely country roads with sweeping corners through the countryside. We followed big tractors for a good while. And drove on big motorway-like roads up a big pass. There were some much smaller roads too, where the TT felt a lot bigger all of a sudden. And then, after only around 2 hours, Northern Ireland is tiny, we reached the North Atlantic, where the coastline is rugged and the ocean is rough, where big waves break over black rocks, fully hiding them under the white spray, and where strong winds make standing up straight almost impossible. It is a beautiful place, a place where you are truly exposed to the elements. The TT took us here via fantastic roads, and it did that without any effort at all, no matter the type of road. The suspension is sporty but not too harsh. The engine noise is there, but it's quite subtle, so it doesn't get annoying after a long time. And the seats are sports seats, but they are very comfortable. Just the windows could have been a little bigger so that I could have seen more of the beautiful landscape. But oh well, it is a sports car after all. But it is a sports car that you can take on a little adventure. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.